What if the scariest moment of your life turned out to be the exact wake-up call you needed? Imagine standing in a sterile clinic, staring at a glucometer's flashing numbers, and realizing those digits could either define you forever or kickstart the most powerful transformation of your life. Today on the Daily Vitality Dose, you're about to hear one man's unbelievable story, how he turned a terrifying type 2 diabetes diagnosis into a completely natural reversal, step by step. But before we begin, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss your daily boost of health-changing inspiration. Trust me, you'll want every single dose. What if a single morning could change everything you thought you knew about your health? When James opened his eyes that day, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, and the familiar hum of his alarm clock faded into the background as he reached for his phone. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and realized his vision was strangely blurred. His hands trembled as he pushed off the covers and stumbled to the bathroom mirror. For a moment, he stared at a stranger, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead. A wave of dizziness swept over him, and he gripped the sink to steady himself. It was the first sign that his body was sending an urgent, yet overlooked, distress signal. Over the previous months, James had experienced subtle warnings that he'd brushed aside as stress, age, or a hectic schedule. There was the unquenchable thirst that drove him to refill water glasses at midnight, the trips to the bathroom that became more frequent, the fatigue that made climbing a single flight of stairs feel like scaling a peak. Yet, as a 52-year-old office manager accustomed to juggling spreadsheets and deadlines, he dismissed these issues. He told himself he was simply overworked, that he needed more sleep or fewer late-night snacks. At work, during a routine presentation, the screen text wavered before his eyes. Words undulated, colors smeared, and an overwhelming nausea forced him to pause. His colleagues exchanged worried glances as he gripped the podium, forcing out the next slide. Afterward, he brushed off their concerns with a tired smile but scheduled a doctor's appointment that evening more out of obligation than genuine fear. In the sterile chill of the clinic, James sat across from Dr. Patel, whose calm demeanor belied the gravity of the lab results spread before her. She explained, with professional clarity, that his fasting glucose level exceeded 200 milligrams per deciliter and his A1C hovered perilously around 8.5%. Those numbers, she said, confirm type 2 diabetes, a chronic condition in which the body fails to use insulin effectively. He listened as she outlined the risks: neuropathy, vision loss, cardiovascular disease. She slid a prescription for metformin across the desk and stressed the importance of lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, stress management, alongside medication. The word lifelong echoed in his mind as he accepted the small orange bottle, its label stark against the white countertop. Stepping out into the bright afternoon, the prescription felt like a sentence. James pictured his children, teenagers with bright futures, and wondered how many birthdays he would miss if he followed the same path as his mother, who had endured years of diabetes complications before passing at 68. That evening, James sat alone in his living room, prescription in hand. The room was dim, illuminated by a single lamp casting long shadows on the walls. He stared at the label, "Take one tablet twice daily." The decision loomed before him like a forked road: accept medication and brace for a lifetime of doctor visits, or seek another path, one less certain but filled with promise. His thoughts drifted to an article a friend had shared months earlier, stories of people who had reversed type 2 diabetes through disciplined changes in diet and daily habits. He had bookmarked it, intending to read it someday. But tonight, fear sharpened his resolve. He realized that accepting the diagnosis didn't have to mean surrender. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and made a silent vow. He would try to reclaim his health naturally before relying solely on pills. The next morning, James transformed his kitchen into a research hub. He spread out medical journals, patient testimonials, and nutrition guides across the table. He learned that insulin resistance often results from excess abdominal fat, and that reducing refined carbohydrates, increasing fiber, and focusing on whole foods could dramatically improve blood sugar control. He discovered the impact of consistent, moderate exercise, brisk walks, light strength training, yoga stretches, all proven to enhance insulin sensitivity. He read about the damaging effects of chronic stress and the benefits of mindfulness practices. By noon, his shopping list was filled with leafy greens, berries, legumes, nuts, lean proteins, and plain Greek yogurt. He downloaded a meal tracking app and a step counter. He even scheduled a consultation with a nutrition coach specializing in diabetes reversal stories. On day one of his new regimen, James rose at dawn. He drank warm water with freshly squeezed lemon, then laced up his walking shoes. The neighborhood lay quiet under a pink-tinged sky as he set off at a steady pace, breathing in the cool morning air. Returning home, he prepared a breakfast of scrambled eggs with spinach and sliced avocado. No toast, no processed carbs. Throughout the day, he made conscious choices: a lunch of grilled chicken salad with olive oil dressing, avoiding the office pizza, 2 short meditation breaks to calm his mind, a mid-afternoon snack of almonds and blueberries instead of cookies from the break room. Each decision felt intentional, each meal a small victory. That evening, he logged his data: 7,500 steps, balanced meals, 8 glasses of water, and 30 minutes of guided breathing. As he reviewed the statistics on his phone, he felt a lightness he hadn't known in months. For the first time since his diagnosis, hope outpaced fear. No transformation happens without a few rocky steps, and James's journey was no exception. From the moment he committed to change, James discovered that good intentions aren't always enough. On day 2, he stood in the supermarket aisle, staring at a wall of sugary cereals and snack bars. Every colorful box seemed to call his name. He gripped a bag of mixed nuts instead, his heart pounding with the weight of willpower. That small victory set the tone for the day, but as the hours passed, the real challenges emerged. Back at the office, the mid-afternoon slump hit like a freight train. His energy cratered, and the donut box on the break room table beckoned. He remembered his promise and reached for a handful of almonds. The crunch was satisfying, but the temptation lingered. He reminded himself of the bigger goal: taking back control of his life. That evening, he prepared dinner with newfound purpose. His kitchen, once a staging ground for quick frozen meals, now smelled of garlic, herbs, and sautéed vegetables. He chopped bell peppers and lean chicken breast, tossing them into a cast-iron skillet. The sizzle and aroma reminded him why he chose this path. It wasn't about deprivation, it was about nourishing his body. After dinner, James felt the familiar tug of exhaustion. Instead of collapsing onto the couch, he rolled out a yoga mat and followed a gentle stretching routine he learned online. At first, his muscles protested, but by the end, he felt slightly more limber and proud of resisting the urge to skip exercise. The next morning brought James's first clear sign of progress. He pricked his finger and watched the glucometer display 185 milligrams per deciliter, down from 220 the week before. It wasn't perfection, but it was undeniable improvement. He allowed himself a small smile before recording the number in his tracking app. Over the next few days, patterns emerged. Some mornings, he woke with a spring in his step. Other times, fatigue lingered despite an early bedtime. He learned to listen to his body. On high-energy days, he extended his walks. On low-energy days, he focused on hydration and meditation. He discovered that flexibility and self-compassion were as crucial as discipline. By the end of week 1, James had laid a foundation of new habits, healthier meals, daily movement, stress breaks, and tasted his first breakthroughs. More importantly, he realized that change isn't linear. There would be setbacks, plateaus, and temptations. But armed with early wins and a growing belief in his own resilience, James felt ready to push further. By the time James reached the 3rd month of his journey, he had settled into a new rhythm. Mornings began with the same brisk walk, the sun just peeking over rooftops as he tracked his steps. His breakfast of vegetable frittatas and fresh berries no longer felt like sacrifices, but rather rituals of self-care. He noticed subtle shifts. His energy was steadier throughout the day. The mid-afternoon slump that had once threatened to derail him was now a distant memory. His glucometer readings, once stubbornly high, crept downward, day by day, point by point. Yet beneath these encouraging signs lurked a growing tension, a plateau that tested his conviction. As April gave way to May, the pace of change slowed. His weight, which had fallen steadily, stalled on the same number for weeks. His A1C, while improved, refused to dip further without drastic effort. Friends and family congratulated him on his progress, but James felt restless. Each evening, he reviewed his food logs and exercise data, searching for the elusive tweak that would reignite his downward trajectory. He experimented with new variables, swapping olive oil for coconut oil, adding a midday stretch break, shifting his cardio routine to interval walking. Still, the scale and meter held firm. The real test arrived one Sunday at his daughter's birthday brunch. The kitchen table groaned under the weight of pancakes, pastries, and colorful donuts, his daughter's favorites. Laughter and the smell of vanilla icing filled the room. James felt a familiar tug of longing, that nostalgic pull toward comfort foods he had once devoured without guilt. For a moment, he hesitated, plate in hand. Then he remembered how the old days had ended. Groggy mornings, anxiety over every meal, the looming specter of insulin injections. He replaced the donut with a single fresh strawberry, sipping sparkling water instead of mimosas. His family cheered quietly. His daughter caught his eye and mouthed, "I'm proud of you." Despite these victories, the undercurrent of frustration persisted. One afternoon at the office, a sudden project crisis sent his stress levels skyrocketing. His heart pounded, and he found himself craving the sugary snack drawer he had banned weeks earlier. It wasn't physical hunger, but an emotional ache, the same urge that had once been soothed by comfort food. He excused himself for a quick breathing exercise in an empty conference room. For deep inhales, 6 slow exhales, repeated until his pulse slowed. When he returned, he poured himself a glass of iced green tea and refocused on solutions rather than sweets. Behind the scenes, James leaned heavily on his support network. He logged into the online diabetes reversal forum each evening, reading others' stories of plateaus and recoveries. He shared his own frustrations, and replies flooded in. Try adding resistance bands at home. Have you audited your nightly sleep quality? Remember, progress isn't linear. He realized he wasn't alone in the struggle, that the plateau was as much a rite of passage as any triumph. His nutrition coach encouraged him to introduce a weekly feast day, a measured treat that would reset his metabolism rather than derail it. Together, they crafted a meal of sweet potatoes, grilled salmon, and dark chocolate, balanced, portioned, and fully intentional. By the end of the 3rd month, James had emerged from the crucible of commitment with a renewed sense of mastery. He had learned that transformation is rarely a straight line. It demands patience, adaptability, and the willingness to face discomfort rather than escape it. His glucometer showed a steady downward trend once more, and the scale finally moved again, just 1 pound, but enough to light a spark of excitement. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror and allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. By the 4th month of his transformation, James had settled into a rhythm he never imagined possible. He woke before dawn, logged his meals, walked each evening with his family, and practiced mindful breathing every afternoon. His A1C had dropped from 8.5% to 7.2%, and his daily glucose readings hovered just above the normal range. He felt healthier, more energetic, even hopeful. And yet, he hit a wall. One morning, the scale refused to budge. His blood sugar stubbornly ticked above 130 milligrams per deciliter, despite perfect adherence to his plan. The muscle aches crept back in. His clothes felt snug again. Worst of all, the excitement that once fueled every decision began to fade under the weight of monotony. James sat at his desk in the same office where, months ago, blurred vision had sent him to the clinic. Now, he stared at his computer screen, an Excel chart of his weekly averages, and wondered if he was fooling himself. He thought of the prescription bottle still half full in his medicine cabinet. He thought of the tempting aroma of donuts in the break room. He thought of his wife, Maria, who encouraged him with gentle optimism, and his children, who asked questions about what plateau meant. He realized that transformation was not a straight line. It was a journey of plateaus and pivots. And this plateau was his crucible, a test of resolve stronger than any initial spark of motivation. Every habit has a honeymoon phase. The first salads taste exciting. The extra energy feels thrilling. But over time, repetition can breed complacency. James found himself mechanically following his routine. Oatmeal with berries for breakfast, a midday salad, a 30-minute walk, grilled fish for dinner. The novelty wore off, replaced by a dull ache of boredom. Work deadlines loomed, stealing mental energy. The online community he had joined offered fewer new success stories, and his messages received delayed responses. He felt isolated in his struggle. The support that once buoyed him now seemed distant. In the break room one afternoon, James watched a coworker savor a glazed donut. The scent teased him. He felt a pang of longing, not just for sugar, but for freedom from restriction. For a moment, he considered giving in. "One donut won't hurt," he whispered to himself. That evening, James sat at his kitchen table surrounded by his meal tracking app and a half-written journal entry. He paused, pen hovering over paper. His old fear of medication returned. But so did his cautious optimism. I've come too far to plateau forever. He remembered a passage from a book on behavior change. When progress stalls, small adjustments can reignite growth. He realized he needed a pivot, a deliberate change to break the stalemate. He picked up his phone and messaged his nutrition coach. "I'm stuck. My numbers have plateaued. Can we adjust?" Within hours, she responded with 3 suggestions. Cycle carbs strategically. Introduce higher carb days once per week to reset metabolism. Strength training add-on. Incorporate 2 20-minute resistance sessions to build muscle and boost insulin sensitivity. Mindful indulgence. Allow a single, low-glycemic treat on Fridays to satisfy cravings without derailing progress. James felt a surge of hope. These tweaks were modest but targeted, enough to break the cycle without abandoning his core plan. On Saturday morning, he swapped his usual walk for a brisk resistance workout in his garage, bodyweight squats, push-ups against the wall, and resistance band rows. His muscles protested, but he welcomed the burn. It felt purposeful. Sunday became his high-carb day, featuring roasted sweet potatoes and quinoa in his meals, alongside extra veggies. He measured portions carefully but relished the fullness he had previously denied himself. That Friday, Maria baked a small almond flour muffin sweetened with berries. James took a deliberate, unhurried bite, savoring the tart sweet flavor. He logged it without guilt and returned to his routine the next morning with renewed determination. Within 2 weeks, the pivot paid off. His weight began to drop again, and his average glucose dipped back into the 110 to 120 mg/dl range. More importantly, the emotional fog lifted. He rediscovered enjoyment in variety and flexibility. His walks with the family turned into lively conversations about weekend plans. His journal entries flowed with reflections on gratitude rather than grievances. At work, his coworkers noticed the change. He walked with a taller posture, joked more freely, and even shared a photo of his latest lab report, A1C now at 6.6%, on the community forum. Messages of congratulations poured in. He realized that health is not just a solitary pursuit but a shared celebration. 6 months after that pivotal day 1 walk, James stood in the familiar yet transformed clinic room, greeting Dr. Patel with a confident nod instead of the anxiety that once gripped him. The glucometer beeped and displayed an A1C of 5.2%, well within a healthy range. The pills he once regarded as lifelines had been gradually tapered until they were no longer needed. As the numbers blinked on the screen, James felt a swell of pride. This moment was the culmination of countless small choices that had reshaped his life. Each morning, long before the sun peeked over the rooftops, James rose to practice silent meditation on his balcony. He breathed deeply, centering his thoughts before lacing up his walking shoes. The brisk walks that followed became more than exercise. They were celebrations of his reclaimed health. With each step, he felt the tension of years melt away, replaced by an invigorating sense of possibility. Back at home, his kitchen had evolved from a research hub into a haven of vitality. Maria and the kids affectionately teased him about his colorful salads, bundles of leafy greens, vibrant peppers, and grilled salmon drizzled with olive oil. Family dinners were lively affairs, filled with laughter and stories rather than processed carbs and sugary sodas. James noticed that his teenage children had also joined the healthy habit, swapping late-night snacks for fruit and water. Beyond the walls of his home, James's journey garnered attention. The local community center invited him to speak at a wellness workshop, where he shared his story with an audience of eager listeners. As he recounted his challenges and triumphs, he saw faces light up with hope. Some approached afterward to ask for guidance, inspired by the idea that change was possible. In that moment, James recognized that his purpose extended beyond personal transformation. He had become a catalyst for others. At work, James returned with renewed energy. He led projects with focus and creativity, rarely taking sick days and often leaving colleagues curious about his secret. His team noticed a newfound calm in meetings and a willingness to share his wellness strategies. Over time, a walking club formed among coworkers who joined him for brief midday strolls around the building. On weekends, James led his family on hiking trips along shaded trails, packing wholesome snacks and marveling at nature's beauty with fresh eyes. He kept a journal to track his moods, meals, and energy levels, discovering that this ritual of reflection strengthened his resolve and deepened his gratitude. Reflecting on the journey, James understood that reversing his type 2 diabetes was not an endpoint but a milestone. The true victory lay in the habits he built: mindful meals, regular movement, stress management, and supportive connections. These routines had woven themselves into the tapestry of his daily life, ensuring he would never return to old patterns. As the first rays of dawn shimmered over the horizon, James smiled. His life had been reimagined, one day at a time. Though the numbers on his medical chart were now a testament to success, the real story was the unwavering spirit that carried him forward, day after purposeful day. If you've just witnessed James's incredible journey reversing type 2 diabetes naturally, you know that true wellness isn't a quick fix. It's a lifelong commitment to nourishing your body from the inside out. That's why Wellness Through Nourishment by Dorothy Evans, Ph.D., is the perfect companion to your new path of health. In our video, you saw how targeted nutrition, balanced blood sugar, and stress management transformed one man's life. Dr. Evans takes these principles even further, showing you how the same science can help prevent or manage not only diabetes but heart disease, autoimmune flare-ups, and chronic inflammation. She writes with the empathy of someone who's walked alongside countless patients, and with the rigor of a researcher who's pored over hundreds of clinical studies. Imagine waking each morning with steady energy, confident that your next meal will fuel your cells rather than spike your glucose. Picture family dinners where colorful salads, lean proteins, and gut-friendly prebiotics are the norm, foods that heal rather than harm. Dr. Evans doesn't just list nutrients. She teaches you the why and the how. Why cinnamon and chromium improve insulin sensitivity, how omega-3s calm systemic inflammation, and why the right fiber can balance hormones from thyroid to cortisol. You'll meet real people whose A1C readings plummeted, whose joint pain eased, and whose moods brightened. Stories that echo James's own triumph, but add layers of heart disease prevention, digestive restoration, and mental clarity. Each chapter ends with practical recipes and meal plans you can adapt, whether you're cooking for one or feeding a family. This isn't a prescription for endless deprivation, but a roadmap for sustainable change. And because Dr. Evans knows that knowledge empowers the best outcomes, she includes detailed shopping lists, smart swaps for your favorite comfort foods, and even stress-busting breathing exercises to complement your new diet. Wellness Through Nourishment is available now on Amazon. Just click the link in the description below to get your copy today. Begin your own story of reversal, resilience, and radiant health.